Today, I'll be sharing with you all the tips and tricks I use to stay injury-free while running in excess of 60 kilometers per week. Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. I'm Josh, a medical student and triathlete based here in London. On this channel, we talk all things swim, bike and run, whether those be vlogs or training tips like this video. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Today, I'll be running you through how I avoid those pesky running injuries, and I'm focusing in on running here because I feel like it's the sport that causes the most injuries for triathletes, because it puts a humongous amount of stress on those lower legs, on your knees and on your ankles, just that force of pounding the ground when you're out for a run, especially if you live in a city and you can't hit those trails. It's really important to stay healthy, stay fit and look after those joints. So that's what we'll be focusing on in today's video, although a lot of these principles will apply to triathletes or cyclists and swimmers as well. Our first tip up today is foam rolling. A foam roller like this one here is one of the best things you can do for your recovery, and they're actually pretty affordable. I don't know how much I got this one for, but I just picked it up off Amazon. By foam rolling the muscles, especially in your lower leg, you're giving them a form of deep tissue massage, and this has been scientifically shown to improve blood flow, and that is thought to allow all those nutrients and stuff to get to the muscles to help replenish them and remove any of the bad byproducts that we produce when we break down our muscles. This improves our recovery and reduces muscle ache after a hard training session. Personally, I try to use my foam roller normally twice a day. So when I wake up in the morning, I'll do some foam rolling and some stretching, which we're talking about as our next tip. And then I also try and do it after a hard workout, especially when it comes to running. Use your foam roller to focus on the muscles or the muscle groups that are giving you the most trouble and aching the most the next day. So for me, that's my hamstrings. I find that I'm really kind of focusing on those hamstring engagement and activation when I'm running. And that means that the next day they do tend to ache a little bit more than, say, my calves or my quads. So for me, I make sure to give my hamstrings at least a couple of minutes on each side worth of foam rolling to really allow that massage to sink in. In the same vein as foam rolling, I'd recommend picking up one of these. This is just a hard squash ball. You could use any kind of hard ball that isn't hollow on the, or isn't really hollow on the inside. And this is really good for using on your feet. Just put it under your foot and roll it like that. It's really, really good to help release any tightness and massage the sole of your foot. Really just kind of loosen up any of those connective tissues in the small muscles of the foot, which can become especially tight and painful if you're not doing this regularly and you're running a lot. So these balls and the foam roller are both really cheap and will make a big difference to your running recovery. Tip 1 was really cheap. Tip 2 is completely free, and that's stretching. Stretching is another classic of the running world, and although there's not a lot of scientific data to back up the benefits from stretching, personally and anecdotally, I know that myself and lots of other runners find it incredibly beneficial as part of a well-rounded and holistic recovery routine. Like I said earlier, I try and stretch at least twice per day, once either in the morning or in the evening, and then definitely after a workout, just to kind of loosen up the joints, if that's something that I've had a lot of problems with in the past. I'm not going to run through my whole stretching routine that I do every day right now, but if that is something you want to see, then leave it down in the comments below and I'll definitely get to that if it's something you're interested in. To briefly summarize, this is quite a personal thing, so you might want to work on other groups, but I find that working on my hips, my quads, my hamstrings and my ankle flexibility is what's really important for me, as those are the parts that I get tight and that I notice that maybe aren't as flexible as I would like to keep maintaining a really good running form. Next up is something that can be significantly more expensive than things we've talked about so far, and that's something like this, my Theragun, or just a massage gun, or massages in general. Massaging or massage guns perform a similar role to foam rolling or soft balls. Again, they're a form of deep tissue massage which promotes blood flow, allowing nutrients and removing bad byproducts. So if you're foam rolling regularly and you find that really helps, that might be enough for you, and that's definitely where I'd start, as buying a massage gun can be a big investment compared to quite cheap foam rollers. But I do find that a massage gun is a great addition to my recovery. It allows me to get the muscles which I sometimes struggle to foam roll, such as my IT bands, although not a muscle, definitely worth using with the massage gun. It's sometimes quite hard to foam roll those, that can be a little bit too much, so being able to kind of start off with this is really, really useful. and then just kind of working on lots of the tendons and the ligaments in the hip and like the Achilles tendon and stuff is where I find my Theragun to come into massive effect. I've actually done a full review of this specific massage gun, the Theragun, so if you want to see that, that's up in the corner and down in the description. Our fourth tip today is something you might not really think about when it comes to running recovery, but that's about picking the right shoes and having suitable footwear for your runs. It's easy to forget, but our running shoes don't last forever, no matter how much I'd like them to. You can often feel that once you've run a shoe for a really long time, they start to bottom out. You might notice that their feet are slightly sorer while wearing them. They just don't quite feel as good as when you first got them, and this might be a sign that it's time to move on to a new pair of shoes, as once the foam starts to really compress and there's not as much give in them, that does increase the risk that you're going to injure yourself and therefore injure yourself and recover more poorly after sessions. Personally, I use an app like Strava to track how much I've run on each of my pairs of shoes. I don't go off a specific number. I've got some shoes that I continue to run in after running 1000k in them, and some after 400 or 500, which are totally done. It just kind of helps to keep in mind which shoes you've run in and justify whether or not they might be ready to kind of be moved on. And the other thing to think about when you're thinking about running shoes is picking the suitable footwear for the run. It might not be a good idea to run in track spikes or something really low profile like a racing flat for your long run if you're not an experienced runner. You might want something with a medium stack height to really make sure that you're cushioning and avoiding some of the injuries and improving your recovery. If you want to learn more about running shoes and which ones you might want to do certain runs in, I've actually got a really good video on your running shoe rotation, which I'll leave in the corner and in the video description again. Another quick tip is watching out for your running volume. It's really easy to get carried away and increase your running volume too much, especially if you're a newer runner, but this massively increases your risk of being injured. If you're not experienced and you go from running 10 kilometers to 20 kilometers the next week, you're doubling. That's a 100% increase. That's a massive risk of getting injured because your body just isn't adapted to the amount of pressure and the amount of force going through your legs, and you will injure yourself if you keep doing that. A really good and common rule of thumb when it comes to running volume is to not increase your volume by more than 10% each week. So if you're currently running 20 kilometers and you want to increase up to 22 kilometers next week, and if you can do 22 kilometers without being injured, then increase up to 24 or just over 24, and so on until you're at your desired running volume, or toning it back slightly if you feel like you're too fatigued or start to become notice little niggles and stuff that might kind of turn into full injuries. It's really good to keep that in mind and avoid those overuse injuries, and although it isn't technically about recovery, I do think it's really important to say in this video. And our final bonus tip is sleep. Sleep is probably the best thing you can do to aid in your recovery. It helps to regain muscle, all of those kind of things. It is so incredibly important, and it's one of the best things you can do, but it's one of the things that we all always miss out, and it's the last thing that I wrote and thought of when writing this video. But it is incredibly important, so don't let it being the last tip fool you in that way. Making sure you get enough sleep is incredibly important. Now, there's no hard and fast rule about how much sleep you would get, but personally, I think 8 hours is a pretty good goal to get a minimum amount of sleep. If you can improve on that, get 9 hours or have some naps in the afternoon if your work allows you to do that, that will only improve your recovery even more. You can't really sleep too much within reason. If you are trying to improve your sleep, I would highly recommend this book. It's simply called Sleep, so you know it's good. And it's by Nick Littlehales, who was a sleep engineer for Team Sky, the professional cycling team. And although we're talking about running, it will definitely help. I think this is one of the best books I've ever found to kind of really break down how you need to think about sleep as an athlete. So I can highly recommend it, and there'll be a link for that book down below. And I've also done a whole video on sleep, which you can check out as well. But that's it for this video. Let me know if you've got any running injury prevention tips that I've missed out, you think that I should be doing. Leave those down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you and learn how I can prevent those injuries even more. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more running and triathlon related content. That really helps me out. On screen now is my Theragun review, in case you missed that one earlier and wanted to learn whether or not that's right for you. And I'll see you all in the next video.